We are back again. Um, I listen. I feel like the last time, which was last week, I opened up by apologizing for my voice, and I still don't think my voice is where it needs to be. Um, it isn't. I am not fully back to my normal self. I'm hoping that in the next couple of days I can claim 100%, but I'm definitely not. This morning I woke up and I felt better than I did for at least for the last few days. Yesterday I didn't feel too good at all. Um, but I'm here. I'm happy to as always. I look forward to sharing this moment with you and being a part of this. And I'm looking forward to today's conversation. As always, we're gonna start with two things. One, an exercise in mindfulness, just 10 breaths, focusing on your breath, starting now. And just like we always do, I'm going to start us off with a little brain teaser. And the brain teaser is the more of this there is, the less you see. What is it? The more of this there is, the less you see. What is it? Uh, I think it's safe to say that life is lifing right now, and there's a lot going on around us. Um, Locally, wherever you are, and then in a larger scale, a global scale. And I've always um, wondered uh, how other creatives uh, handle, or at least find their creativity in the midst of life and everything that um, life brings. And it's interesting is because I'm noticing it myself, and and there's a lot going on, and maybe we can get into that. But I think I've always learned to just kind of keep moving along, and it isn't necessarily the best approach, but it is something that has worked for me throughout my entire life. I try not to dwell on the things that are happening. I just kind of keep moving, and eventually it's gonna work itself out. Um, I and I don't know that that is the best way to deal with it as a creative, but um, it's a little different when the conversation that I'm having is with other creatives. And I'll give you an example. I mean, I've said it before. I'm a professor as well at a design university, and uh, at the start of the class, I'd always ask the students, "How's everybody doing?" And you could tell, like from their faces, and that they're not necessarily doing their best. Um, and then I always start class similar to how I start here, where it's like, "Hey, let's do an exercise in mindfulness to get us in the moment, being present, and then let's follow that up with just something to get our brain sharp, and then that's when we get into the weed of things." And a lot of them find it difficult to be able to create and be creative when the world is happening around them. And how do you do that, right? How do you tell somebody, hey, um, go and build this thing and pretend like everything else is not happening? And whenever I start, especially for this course, or when I speak to people, I always say, like, there's opportunities to create just for the sake of creating, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I've always believed that there's opportunities to create where you can actually change or save the world. And that's a heavy, heavy task or burden. So I don't take it lightly, but I've always believed that if especially in these particular moments, like if we're conscious of like, hey, what we're doing will impact the world eventually, and we cannot do it individually. On one-off scenarios, we might not be able to do it, but collectively, we are working. What we're building, the things that we're building here, will eventually make the world a little bit easier for the generation after us. So life doesn't feel as much of a burden as it sometimes can. And that kind of lightens the mood, because now it's like, okay, at least I'm helping to contribute to a better version of what's happening right now. And for a lot of them, I think that's all that they need to hear, and then that gives them the motivation they need to be able to continue to create and build. And I'm saying that knowing I too have the challenge of trying to remain creative when my own life, there's a lot happening. And we all live in our own individual worlds, but then it almost seems minuscule when compared to the larger world. And how do I, one, remain sane, but find time to allow myself to be immersed in my creativity while everything else is happening? And there's a few things that I do. I remember, I try not to drive into the city, just because it can get chaotic sometimes. And then the parts of the city that I actually have to be in, it's hard to find parking. So I would usually take public transport, specifically the subway. And I would usually ride with my headphones in, and I would be either listening to music or a book, Audible. And for the last few weeks, I've not had the urge to listen to anything. And I never question it, because I naturally, when I walk out of my my place, as I start my commute, I would take it out the case, I would plop it in and choose whatever it is that I'm going to listen to, and then it's on. But the last few weeks, it hasn't been like that. And I thought about it, and it's like, it is me searching for inspiration, because a lot of my inspiration comes from being able to travel and experience life from a different perspective. But sometimes it's not convenient, or the opportunity to travel, especially abroad, isn't. It's not possible in the moment because of everything that is happening. I still have a family. I still have work. I still have friendships. I have relationships. I have business relationships. I have personal relationships. I'm expected to show up in places. I'm expected to perform in whatever capacity. I'm expected to be sane. I'm expected to react in certain ways. I'm expected of all these things every day of my life. And I cannot just escape that whenever I want to, right? So what I notice is, what I noticed was, instead of being distracted by the music or the books, what I would do is just use that opportunity to just take in the environment, take in the people, take in the different occurrences in my commute, and then leaning on that to kind of fuel my creativity. So I find myself being more conscious and cognizant of everything around me, because there's these micro opportunities for me to, one, give my creativity the ability to flourish, to actually be in its element. Because if I don't give it the time now, the way my life is set up, I might never have the opportunity to for the rest of the day. So I have to be intentional in creating those spaces for my creativity to actually show itself, or at least be inspired to know that whenever I need it, I could call it, because I gave it something to fuel it to be able to continue. And it has been interesting, and I had to do some reflection to really understand why. And and that's the reason. It's I am allowing myself the opportunity for creativity to flow even when I don't have the time to. And I'm creating these spaces intentionally for my creativity to show itself. And it's as simple as that. And there's been other times where it's like I have to prioritize myself. Like yesterday in particular, there was an event that I had to attend, and physically, I knew I couldn't. My body was telling me, "Hey, you cannot." Class ended, and usually I'd stay in the city if I have follow-up meetings, or I could. It's a good opportunity to meet with a few of my friends that are either in the city or around the city. I had a meeting right after I got out of class, and I didn't have it in me to stay in the city long enough to attend the event later in the evening. And I told myself, all right, go home. Your body is telling you it needs rest. Give it the rest that it needs. And if in a couple hours you wake up and you feel like you can do this, then you do it. But if you feel like you can't, don't. And I knew a lot of who I am was going to be attached to this event, from a social aspect, from a business aspect, from a personal friendship aspect as well. A few of the people that I respect, a few of the people that I hold dear, they were going to be at this event, and we had talked about it, and it would have been a great opportunity to socialize. And when I got home and I went through the process of getting my body kind of relaxed enough to the point where I could rest. After a couple hours, my body just kept telling me, you can't. Like, you just can't. And so I didn't. I didn't get up. I didn't force myself to. I tried. But as much as I wanted to, and I made myself some miso ramen. That didn't. I mean, it was filling, and I felt good after it. I felt I was satisfied, but I didn't. I still didn't have it in me. My body was still telling me, yeah, I don't think you're gonna go anywhere. And I know there's a lot riding on this, but you just can't. And that's something that I've constantly had to, or have to, deal with on a daily basis. And it's like, what do I do when physically I don't feel right? emotionally, there's all these things that are happening at the same time. Um, I still have this family dynamic and my children and my friendships, and there's still work. And this is constantly every day. And how do I properly manage this and still remain the creative being that I am? And that's been a work in progress for me. It's like, all right, what do I do? Do I is do I shut the world off and find myself, find my creativity, and then once it's found, do I now allow myself to integrate back into society? Do I try to find middle ground, where I fine tune how much of me is accessible, how much of me is not, when and where, and like all this is like, it's just been a constant thought for me. It's like as much as I want to be social, I want to be outside, I want to do these things. It's like, honestly, I just want to create. I want to change the world, and I want to spend my life doing that. But I cannot also be living a normal life and have the expectation to try. All right, it's your task to help change the world. And I think that's the difficult part. And it's like, I'm exploring things that I possibly can do, to be able to cope is a good word, to be able to cope. I looking into therapy again, just to kind of see, it's like, am I going about this the right way? It's not even from a all is lost perspective. It's like, hey, I've been going through it this particular way, and in my head it has been working for me, but it might not be the right way. And not to say that there is a right way, but maybe there's a better way for me to achieve the thing that I'm trying to achieve, that is with less friction. Because I still want to be the best version of myself every time I need to show up as myself. And again, there's that's a lot to ask of any creative, knowing that you exist in a world that you're experiencing everything that is happening to everybody else, outwardly, and then still expected to be able to help create the things that are intended to change the world as you're experiencing it. And I think that is what makes it a little interesting. And I tell my students all the time, it's like, it's okay to feel overwhelmed. I think that is a natural reaction to everything. And some days are going to be better than others. And I've always believed that, and I've said this here, that your purpose is a selfless act. And what you're doing, the things you're creating, are ultimately going to impact the people and the life around you. And as much as that is the case, you cannot lose yourself trying to help others. You cannot lose yourself trying to change the world. Because unfortunately, and this is a conversation I've had with the students, it's like nobody really cares about your well-being. It's like that's a personal that is a personal priority. And as much as some might be grateful as opposed to others, ultimately, you are responsible for your own physical health, mental health, and everything that involves self. And as much as you've been gifted with the ability to help change the world, in your own little world, you have to make sure that you remain sane and you remain physically capable of being an active contributor to the betterment of everything. And the only way to do that is to make sure that you're prioritizing you in some capacity. I've been I think there's no secret in my affinity for Latin phrases. One in particular that I hold dear to me is mens sana in corpore sano, which translates to a sound mind and a sound body. And for me to be a gift to the world, I have to be a gift to myself. And the only way I can be a gift to myself is that if I'm able to maintain my sanity and my physical and spiritual health as best as I can. And if I'm performing at optimum, there's no telling the things I can create, the innovation that I can produce to help change the world that is around me. And I'm expected to continue to do so while living a life that is lifing. And that is one of the challenges of being a creative and living in your creativity. It's you are supposed to experience the world just as how everybody else is, but expected to be the change agent. Expected to create the thing that makes the world we live in better than it is today. We will end how we always start. The original question was, or the puzzle was, the more of this there is, the less you see. What is it? The more of this there is, the less you see. What is it? It's darkness. As always, it's a pleasure. Just to let you know, we might not have an episode next week. I'm doing some traveling, so getting out of the city for a little bit. As always, go be great.